Hashtag the silent hunter. The morning mist clung to the rocky outcroppings of Kepler 442b like ghostly fingers, creating perfect cover for what was about to unfold. Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez pressed herself against the cold granite, her breath forming small clouds in the thin atmosphere. 3 years into humanity's first interstellar conflict, she had learned that survival meant becoming one with whatever terrain the universe threw at you. The Zephyrian invasion fleet had arrived 6 months ago, their sleek vessels cutting through Earth's outer colonies like silver knives through butter. They called themselves the Dominion of Eternal Skies, a pretentious name for what amounted to galactic bullies with superior technology and an unshakable belief in their own superiority. Their soldiers stood nearly 8 feet tall, with elongated limbs that moved with deadly grace and compound eyes that could supposedly track movement from incredible distances. Elena adjusted her grip on the M2087 rail rifle, a weapon that had been hastily developed after humanity's first devastating encounters with Zephyrian forces. The aliens' energy shields could deflect most conventional projectiles, but Earth scientists had discovered that high-velocity tungsten rounds fired at specific frequencies could penetrate their defenses. The rifle itself was a marvel of human engineering, capable of firing projectiles at nearly 10% the speed of light with pinpoint accuracy across vast distances. Below her position, the Zephyrian advance force moved through the valley with the confidence of predators who had never encountered meaningful resistance. Their battle armor gleamed with an oily iridescence, and their weapons hummed with barely contained energy. Intelligence reports suggested this particular unit, designated Talon Strike Force by Human Command, had never suffered a single casualty in 17 separate engagements across 4 different star systems. The aliens moved in a formation that would have been tactically sound against any opponent they had previously encountered. Their point scouts ranged ahead in sweeping arcs, their sensors painting the surrounding terrain with invisible beams of detection energy. Behind them, the main body advanced in a loose column, each warrior maintaining perfect spacing to avoid clustered casualties from explosive weapons. At the rear, heavy support units carried massive energy cannons capable of reducing fortified positions to molten slag. What the Zephyrians didn't understand was that humans had spent millennia perfecting the art of killing from impossible distances. While the aliens relied on overwhelming technological superiority and coordinated assault tactics, humanity had produced individuals capable of placing a single shot exactly where it needed to go from ranges that defied conventional military doctrine. Elena had been tracking this particular unit for 3 days, moving through terrain that would have challenged a mountain goat, while carrying 40 pounds of specialized equipment. She had studied their movement patterns, identified their command structure, and calculated wind speeds, atmospheric density variations, and gravitational anomalies that could affect bullet trajectory. The Zephyrians had sophisticated detection equipment, but it was calibrated for threats they understood. The alien commander stood slightly apart from his troops, his armor decorated with intricate engravings that spoke of countless victories. Through her scope, Elena could see the subtle movements that marked him as the tactical brain of the operation. Remove the head, and the body would stumble, at least long enough for the human forces waiting in the next valley to execute their own part of the ambush. Her earpiece crackled with the barely audible voice of Lieutenant Colonel Martinez, the operations overall commander. Wraith 6, target is designated. Green light when ready. Elena's call sign, Wraith 6, had been earned through 18 confirmed kills of high-value Zephyrian targets, each shot taken from ranges that pushed the absolute limits of human marksmanship. She had fired from mountainsides, orbital platforms, and the ruins of bombed-out cities, always from positions where the aliens never thought to look for threats. The wind at her altitude was gusting irregularly, creating micro-turbulence patterns that would challenge even the most sophisticated ballistic computers. Elena closed her eyes and felt the air currents against her face, drawing on instincts developed through years of hunting in Earth's most challenging environments long before the war began. Her grandfather had taught her to shoot on the Montana plains, emphasizing patience and precision over rapid fire. Those lessons, refined through military training and baptized in combat, had created a weapon more deadly than any technology the aliens possessed. Through her scope, She watched the Zephyrian commander pause to examine his tactical display. The alien's compound eyes provided him with nearly 360-degree vision, but they were optimized for detecting movement and energy signatures. A human lying perfectly still at extreme range, using equipment designed to mask thermal and electromagnetic signatures, might as well have been invisible. Elena's breathing slowed to a meditative rhythm. Her heart rate dropped to levels that would have concerned a battlefield medic, but which represented the deep calm necessary for impossible shots. The rifle's targeting computer fed her a constant stream of environmental data, but the final calculations happened in neural pathways trained through thousands of hours of practice and dozens of actual combat engagements. The Zephyrian commander raised his head, and Elena saw her moment. The alien's armor had a weakness just below the neck joint where flexibility requirements created a gap in the energy shielding. The shot would have to thread between two overlapping shield generators and strike a target roughly the size of a human thumb from a distance of nearly 3 kilometers. By any rational measure, it was impossible. Elena squeezed the trigger with the gentle pressure of a lover's caress. The rail rifle discharged with a sound like thunder being strangled, its electromagnetic accelerators launching the tungsten projectile into space at velocities that turned the round into a miniature meteor. For a handful of microseconds, the bullet traced an invisible line through the alien sky, its trajectory calculated to intersect with a target that would be moving at the moment of impact. The Zephyrian commander's head snapped back as the round found its mark, the impact so sudden and devastating that his massive body crumpled without even a sound escaping his throat. For a moment, the alien formation froze in perfect confusion, their tactical doctrine providing no immediate response to the sudden decapitation of their leadership structure. Elena was already moving before the aliens began their panicked search for threats. Rolling backward from her firing position, she slithered through a pre-planned escape route that would take her through terrain too rough for the aliens' heavy equipment to follow. Behind her, she could hear the distinctive whine of Zephyrian energy weapons beginning to charge, but they were firing at empty air and bare rock. The secondary effects of her shot rippled through the alien formation like a stone thrown into still water. Without their commander's constant tactical guidance, the Zephyrian warriors defaulted to standard defensive positions that had served them well against conventional opponents. They formed a protective circle, their weapons trained outward, waiting for an assault that would never come from the direction they expected. Hidden positions throughout the valley erupted with human weapons fire as Martinez's troops executed the second phase of their ambush. Mortars rained down explosive rounds designed to stress the aliens' energy shields, while machine gun teams raked the formation with armor-piercing ammunition. The Zephyrians found themselves caught in a crossfire that exploited every weakness in their standard tactical response. Elena continued her withdrawal, occasionally pausing to observe the battle through compact binoculars. The aliens were fighting back with devastating effectiveness, their energy weapons carving molten furrows through the landscape wherever they suspected human positions. But without their commander's strategic overview, they were reacting rather than initiating, always one step behind the constantly shifting human assault. A Zephyrian heavy weapons specialist managed to target one of the human mortar positions, his particle beam reducing the entire installation to superheated plasma in a single blast. But even as he achieved this tactical victory, a human sniper team put 3 rounds through his armor from an angle he hadn't considered possible. The aliens possessed overwhelming firepower, but they had never learned to fight an enemy that refused to stand still and trade shots. As Elena reached her extraction point, a natural cave system that would mask her heat signature from aerial pursuit, she allowed herself a moment of grim satisfaction. The Zephyrian advance force was trapped in a valley with no clear avenue of retreat, facing an enemy that struck without warning and melted away before retaliation could be organized. Intelligence estimates suggested they could hold out for perhaps 6 hours before being completely overwhelmed. But Elena knew the real victory wasn't tactical. Somewhere in the depths of space, Zephyrian fleet commanders would receive reports of this engagement. They would study the tactical recordings, analyze the weapon signatures, and try to understand how their supposedly invincible Talon strike force had been systematically dismantled by a force of primitive humans. The psychological impact would ripple through their command structure like cracks spreading through overstressed metal. Her radio crackled with Martinez's voice. Wraith 6, clean hit. Target down and formation disrupted. Recommend immediate extraction to Grid 7. Copy, Control. Moving to extraction point now. Wraith 6 out. Elena shouldered her rifle and began the long trek through the cave system toward the rendezvous point where a stealth transport would carry her back to human-controlled territory. Behind her, the sound of battle gradually faded into the distance, but she knew this was only the beginning. The Zephyrians had built their empire on the assumption that technological superiority guaranteed military dominance. They had conquered dozens of worlds by deploying overwhelming force against enemies who fought according to predictable patterns. But they had never encountered an enemy that could kill their leaders from impossible distances, that fought from positions their sensors couldn't detect, and that treated every engagement as an opportunity to study alien weaknesses rather than simply trade casualties. As Elena emerged from the caves into the pale sunlight of the alien world's twin suns, she reflected on the larger implications of what had just occurred. Humanity had been pushed to the edge of extinction by the Zephyrian invasion, forced to abandon entire star systems and retreat to increasingly desperate defensive positions. But in that crucible of desperation, human ingenuity had produced weapons and tactics that the aliens couldn't comprehend. The rail rifle on her back represented more than just advanced engineering. It was the culmination of human understanding of ballistics, material science, and electromagnetic acceleration, refined to produce a weapon capable of delivering precisely targeted death across distances that defied conventional military doctrine. But, more importantly, it was wielded by someone trained in the peculiarly human art of patience, precision, and invisible death. Elena reached the extraction point just as the stealth transport materialized from its cloaking field, its hull shimmering like a heat mirage before resolving into solid reality. The pilot, a grizzled veteran named Captain Rodriguez, grinned at her as she climbed aboard. "Heard the fireworks from here," he said. "Command's already planning the next operation based on how well this one went." As the transport lifted off and engaged its cloaking systems, Elena looked back toward the valley where the battle was still raging. The Zephyrians would eventually break out of the trap, but at a cost that would send shockwaves through their entire military hierarchy. More importantly, they would begin to understand that their human opponents possessed capabilities that didn't appear in any tactical manual. The war was far from over, but for the first time since the invasion began, Elena felt a spark of genuine hope. The aliens might have superior technology and overwhelming numbers, but they had never learned to fight ghosts. And humanity, driven to the edge of extinction, was learning to become very good at being invisible, patient, and absolutely deadly. Hashtag the ripple effect. Admiral Zexthal of the Dominion fleet stared at the tactical display with an expression that would have been unreadable to human observers, but which his subordinates recognized as barely contained fury. The holographic representation of the Kepler 442b engagement showed the complete annihilation of Talon strike force in precise, merciless detail. 47 of the Dominion's finest warriors, reduced to scattered atoms across a valley that should have been an easy tactical victory. "Explain to me," Zexthal said, his voice carrying the harmonic undertones that indicated dangerous emotional states in a species, "how a primitive species armed with crude kinetic weapons managed to completely destroy a force that has conquered 17 worlds without suffering a single casualty." Subcommander Keel then, the fleet's tactical intelligence officer, manipulated the holographic display with nervous gestures. Initial analysis suggests the humans employed previously unknown stealth technology combined with precision engagement doctrine. The first casualty was Commander Vexmar, eliminated by a single projectile fired from an impossible range. Défi impossible extrude demanded. 3.78 kilometers, Admiral. Through atmospheric interference that should have made target acquisition mathematically improbable. The projectile struck with sufficient velocity to penetrate military-grade energy shielding and eliminate the target instantly. The bridge crew exchanged glances that spoke of growing unease. The Dominion had built its empire on technological superiority that rendered enemy weapons largely ineffective. Their energy shields could deflect the most advanced directed energy weapons developed by dozens of conquered species. The idea that primitive kinetic rounds could penetrate such defenses challenged fundamental assumptions about military capability. "Show me the weapon's signature analysis," Zexthal ordered. The holographic display shifted to show spectrographic data captured by automated sensors during the engagement. The readings showed energy patterns unlike anything in Dominion databases, electromagnetic signatures that suggested acceleration systems operating on principles their scientists couldn't immediately identify. The projectile achieved approximately 10% of light speed, Keel then continued. "Our shields are designed to deflect energy beams and conventional missiles, not hypervelocity kinetic penetrators. The humans appear to have developed electromagnetic acceleration technology specifically designed to exploit weaknesses in our defensive systems." Zexthal studied the data with growing alarm. Military doctrine throughout the Dominion was based on overwhelming technological superiority. Their forces deployed to conquered worlds expecting to face enemies armed with chemical explosives and primitive energy weapons. The possibility that a supposedly backward species could develop countermeasures to Dominion technology had never been seriously considered. "What about their deployment patterns?" the Admiral asked. "Surely we can adapt our tactical responses to prevent similar ambushes." Keel then manipulated the display again, showing movement patterns detected during the engagement. "That presents additional complications, Admiral. The humans appear to operate individually or in very small groups, utilizing terrain masking and what we believe to be advanced camouflage technology. They strike without warning from positions our sensors cannot reliably detect, then disappear before retaliation can be organized." The implications were disturbing. Dominion military doctrine relied on identifying enemy forces and destroying them with concentrated firepower. An enemy that couldn't be reliably detected rendered such tactics largely useless. Worse, the humans seemed to understand Dominion capabilities well enough to exploit specific vulnerabilities with surgical precision. "Casualties among human forces?" Zexthal inquired. "Unknown, Admiral. We detected no human remains at the engagement site. If they suffered casualties, they evacuated them completely. Intelligence estimates suggest we may have faced fewer than 30 human combatants total." The silence that followed was pregnant with implications that none of the bridge crew wanted to voice. 30 humans had systematically destroyed nearly 50 Dominion elite warriors without suffering detectable losses. The mathematical impossibility of such an outcome challenged everything they believed about their own military superiority. Admiral Zexthal turned away from the display to face his fleet tactical officer. "Subcommander HFY Stor, what is the current disposition of our ground forces?" "We have 3 additional strike forces deployed across the planetary surface, Admiral. All have been ordered to modify their patrol patterns and maintain constant communication with fleet assets. Additionally, we have dispatched reconnaissance drones to establish persistent surveillance grids in areas of suspected human activity. And the orbital bombardment option, available but problematic," HFY Stor admitted. "The humans have established defensive positions in areas of high mineral concentration that interfere with targeting systems. Orbital strikes would require saturation bombardment that would destroy the infrastructure we came here to capture." Zexthal nodded grimly. The Dominion's expansion was driven by the need for rare elements and industrial capacity. Simply reducing conquered worlds to molten slag defeated the entire purpose of conquest. They needed to occupy and control planetary assets, not annihilate them. "What do we know about humans' psychological profiles?" the Admiral asked. "Are they susceptible to intimidation tactics that have proven effective against other species?" Intelligence Subcommander Nexval stepped forward, his data pad displaying recent analysis of captured human communications. "Preliminary assessment suggests the opposite, Admiral. Human psychology appears to include what their literature calls spite. They seem to become more effective combatively when facing impossible odds or threats to their survival. Fear responses that would paralyze other species appear to trigger increased aggression and tactical innovation in humans." This information added another layer of complexity to an already problematic situation. Most species the Dominion had conquered possessed psychological triggers that could be exploited to induce surrender without prolonged fighting. Demonstrate overwhelming superiority, eliminate key leadership figures, and most civilized species would negotiate terms rather than face annihilation. Humans seem to operate according to different psychological parameters entirely. Show me current intelligence on human military capabilities, Zexthul commanded. The tactical display shifted to show a galaxy-wide overview of human defensive positions. Red indicators marked confirmed military installations, while yellow zones indicated areas of suspected resistance activity. The pattern that emerged was unlike anything in Dominion experience. Instead of concentrating forces in easily identified strongholds, human military assets seemed to be distributed in small, mobile units throughout their remaining territory. There were no obvious command centers to target, no massive fleet concentrations to engage and destroy. The humans had apparently learned to fight as dozens of independent cells, each capable of operating without central coordination. Their largest confirmed military installation contains fewer than 5,000 personnel, Nexval reported. Most resistance cells appear to operate with between 10 and 50 combatants. They've completely abandoned traditional military organization in favor of what their doctrine calls asymmetric warfare. Zexthul studied the display with growing unease. Dominion forces were optimized for large-scale engagements against conventional military formations. They could devastate enemy fleets and reduce fortified positions to rubble with overwhelming efficiency. But their doctrine provided no effective response to an enemy that refused to present concentrated targets. Admiral, Subcommander Keel then interrupted, "We're receiving priority communications from Strike Forces Delta and Epsilon. Display them." Two additional holographic figures materialized on the bridge, the commanders of the remaining Dominion ground forces. Both wore expressions that Zexthul recognized as barely controlled anxiety. "Admiral, Commander Thexmore of Strike Force Delta began, we've lost contact with 3 reconnaissance patrols over the past 6 hours. Each patrol simply stopped transmitting without any indication of combat or technical malfunction." Commander Yilseth of Strike Force Epsilon nodded grimly. "Similar situation here, Admiral. 5 separate patrols have gone silent. We've located the remains of 2 units, both eliminated by what appears to be the same precision weapon that destroyed Strike Force Alpha. Single shots, impossible ranges, no survivors." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. If the pattern was accurate, human snipers were systematically eliminating Dominion forces across multiple operational areas simultaneously. The psychological impact on surviving troops would be devastating. The knowledge that death could arrive without warning from any direction would paralyze even elite warriors. "What countermeasures have you implemented?" Zexthul asked. "We've increased patrol sizes and modified movement patterns," Thexmore replied. "But the humans seem to adapt to our tactics faster than we can develop new ones. They're learning our capabilities and exploiting weaknesses we didn't know existed." Additionally, Yilseth added, "Our troops are becoming increasingly reluctant to operate in open terrain. Morale is deteriorating rapidly as word of these assassinations spreads through the ranks." Zexthul felt a chill that had nothing to do with the bridge's environmental systems. Military effectiveness depended on troops believing in their equipment, training, and leadership. If Dominion warriors began to doubt their invincibility, the psychological foundation of their entire military structure would crumble. "I want complete tactical analysis of every engagement," he ordered. "Deploy additional reconnaissance assets and establish overlapping surveillance grids. These humans cannot be invisible to all our detection systems simultaneously." "Admiral," Intelligence Subcommander Nexval interjected, "there's another consideration. Our intelligence networks suggest that human forces throughout their remaining territory are beginning to adopt similar tactics. If they're sharing information about our vulnerabilities, we could face this type of resistance across multiple star systems." The implications were staggering. The Dominion had conquered its empire by defeating enemy forces in decisive battles, then occupying conquered worlds with minimal garrison forces. If humans could train other species in their asymmetric warfare techniques, every Dominion-controlled world could become a battleground where superior technology provided no meaningful advantage. What do you recommend? Zexthal asked his senior staff. Tactical Officer THYSSEC consulted his data displays before responding. We could withdraw our ground forces and implement orbital interdiction protocols. Prevent any ships from entering or leaving the system while we develop countermeasures to human tactics. That would essentially concede the planetary surface to enemy forces, Subcommander Keel then pointed out. Our strategic objectives would remain unachieved while the humans gain time to strengthen their positions. Alternatively, Intelligence Subcommander Nexval suggested, we could escalate our deployment. Bring in additional strike forces with modified equipment specifically designed to counter human capabilities, which would require resources currently deployed elsewhere, Zexthal mused. The Fleet Command would not appreciate having to redeploy assets from other operational areas to deal with a single human-occupied world. The Admiral stared at the tactical display, watching the red indicators that marked suspected human positions. For the first time in his military career, he faced an enemy that couldn't be defeated through conventional application of superior firepower. The humans had somehow learned to fight in ways that neutralized Dominion advantages while exploiting weaknesses that military planners had never considered. Admiral, Communications Specialist Wexlin announced from her station, we're receiving an encrypted transmission from Fleet Command. Priority Alpha classification. Zexthal's expression darkened. Priority Alpha communications were reserved for strategic emergencies or direct orders from the Dominion High Council. Neither possibility suggested good news for his current situation. Transfer to my private chamber, he ordered. All senior staff maintain current operational status and prepare detailed reports on all recent engagements. I want options, not excuses. As Admiral Zexthal retreated to receive what he suspected would be very uncomfortable orders from his superiors, the bridge crew continued monitoring the planetary surface below. Their sensors detected no human activity, no energy signatures, no movement patterns that indicated organized resistance. But everyone aboard the flagship understood that appearances could be deceiving. Somewhere in the seemingly empty landscape, human snipers were planning their next impossible shots. The hunt begins. Corporal Marcus Chun pressed himself against the corrugated metal wall of the abandoned mining facility, his enhanced combat suit automatically adjusting its camouflage pattern to match the rust-stained surface. 12 hours had passed since Elena Vasquez's legendary shot had sent shockwaves through the Zephyrian command structure, and now the aliens were adapting with frightening efficiency. Through his tactical visor, Marcus watched a Zephyrian patrol move through the industrial complex with movements that spoke of heightened paranoia. Gone was the arrogant confidence that had characterized their earlier operations. These warriors moved with the deadly caution of predators who had suddenly realized they might also be prey. The alien patrol consisted of 8 soldiers arranged in a formation Marcus had never seen before. Instead of the loose column that had made previous units vulnerable to precision fire, these Zephyrians moved in a complex pattern that provided overlapping fields of observation and mutual support. Their weapons remained constantly powered, energy readings visible through his suit's sensors as they swept the environment for threats. Control, this is Ghost 7, Marcus whispered into his throat mic, using the call sign assigned to his 2-man reconnaissance team. Target Patrol is employing new tactical doctrine. They've learned from yesterday's engagement. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez's voice crackled through the encrypted channel. Confirmed, Ghost 7. Intelligence reports similar modifications across all Zephyrian units. They're adapting faster than projected. Marcus glanced at his partner, Sergeant Lisa Park, who occupied a position 30 meters away in what had once been the facility's main processing building. Through their shared tactical network, he could see her view of the patrol from a different angle. The aliens were maintaining spacing that would prevent a single sniper from eliminating multiple targets, and their movement pattern made predicting their positions nearly impossible. New problem. Park's voice whispered through the comm system. Check your thermal overlay. Marcus activated his suit's thermal imaging system and immediately understood her concern. The Zephyrian armor now included what appeared to be active heat management systems, creating thermal signatures that flickered and shifted unpredictably. A sniper attempting to track targets through thermal scopes would find it nearly impossible to maintain target lock long enough for a precision shot. They're learning, Marcus muttered. Question is, how fast can they adapt compared to us? The answer came sooner than expected. One of the Zephyrian soldiers raised a device that Marcus's suit computer identified as a previously unknown sensor array. The aliens swept the device across the industrial complex in a systematic grid pattern, and Marcus watched his suit's stealth systems begin registering detection warnings. Park, we've got problems. They're using some kind of new detection equipment. I see it. My suit's showing yellow warnings across multiple spectrum bands. Whatever they're scanning with, it's not in our countermeasures database. Marcus made a rapid tactical decision. Staying put would likely result in detection and death. Moving would reveal their position, but might allow them to escape before the aliens could coordinate a response. The choice was between certain death and probable death, which wasn't really a choice at all. Park, execute escape pattern Charlie on my mark. 3, 2, mark. Both soldiers erupted from their concealment simultaneously, their combat suits switching from stealth mode to maximum mobility configuration. Enhanced leg servos provided bursts of speed that carried them across open ground faster than unaugmented humans could sprint, while their suits' defensive systems deployed electronic countermeasures designed to confuse targeting sensors. The Zephyrian response was immediate and devastating. Energy weapons discharged with sounds like contained lightning, sending bolts of superheated plasma through the air where the humans had been moments before. But the aliens' improved tactics worked against them in this situation. Their dispersed formation meant that only 2 warriors had clear shots at the fleeing humans, while the others were blocked by their own teammates' positions. Marcus dove through the shattered window of a collapsed storage building just as a particle beam carved a molten furrow through the wall beside him. His suit's damage assessment systems showed minor thermal scoring, but no penetrating hits. Park rolled behind a massive piece of industrial machinery as another energy blast turned a section of concrete into steaming vapor. Control, Ghost 7, Marcus reported while scrambling deeper into the ruins. Contact with enhanced Zephyrian patrol. They've got new detection gear and modified tactics. Recommend immediate tactical update for all teams. Copy, Ghost 7. Break contact and move to extraction point Delta. Intelligence wants full debrief on alien capabilities. Roger, Control. Moving to extraction now. But as Marcus and Park began their withdrawal through the industrial complex, they discovered that the Zephyrians had learned more than just new formation tactics. The alien patrol split into coordinated teams that moved to cut off likely escape routes, their movements suggesting tactical doctrine specifically designed to counter human mobility advantages. They're hurting us, Park observed as she watched alien soldiers move into blocking positions. This isn't random pursuit. They've studied our escape patterns and developed countermeasures. Marcus checked his tactical display, which showed Zephyrian positions based on sensor readings from both their suits. The aliens had indeed positioned themselves to force the humans toward a specific area of the complex, a section that would limit their movement options while maximizing alien advantages. New plan, Marcus decided. They expect us to run toward the extraction point. Instead, we're going to circle back and hit them from behind. That's insane. There are 8 of them and 2 of us. Yeah, but they're expecting us to act like prey. Time to remind them that humans are predators too. Marcus activated his suit's combat package, switching from reconnaissance configuration to assault mode. His rifle extended from its storage position along his spine, while targeting systems came online with soft electronic chimes. Park followed suit, her own weapon powering up with a distinctive whine of charging electromagnetic accelerators. The Zephyrian patrol was moving through the complex with methodical precision, checking every potential hiding spot while maintaining their coordinated formation. Their new tactics were highly effective against humans following predictable escape patterns, but they had never encountered prey that chose to become hunters in the middle of a chase. Marcus positioned himself in the upper level of a partially collapsed building, while Park took a flanking position that would allow her to catch the aliens in a crossfire. Through their shared tactical network, they could coordinate their attack with the precision of a single mind controlling multiple bodies. Target acquisition, Marcus whispered as he lined up a shot on the lead Zephyrian warrior. About the point, Scout. You take the heavy weapons specialist on the left flank. Confirmed. Firing solution locked. On your mark. 3, 2, mark. Both humans fired simultaneously, their weapons sending tungsten penetrators downrange at velocities that turn the projectiles into controlled lightning bolts. The lead Zephyrian warrior collapsed as Marcus's round punched through his armor just below the helmet line, while Park's target spun away as her shot severed the alien's primary weapon arm. The remaining Zephyrians reacted with trained efficiency, immediately seeking cover while attempting to locate the sources of the attacks. But their new defensive doctrine, designed to counter long-range sniper fire, provided little protection against close-range ambush tactics. Marcus and Park had positioned themselves inside the aliens' formation perimeter, negating many of their tactical advantages. Marcus shifted positions immediately after firing, rolling through a demolished wall section while his suit's camouflage systems adapted to the new background. A Zephyrian energy bolt carved through the space he had occupied moments before, melting support beams and filling the air with toxic vapor from vaporized building materials. Park had already moved to her secondary position, using the complex's industrial infrastructure to mask her movements. Her next shot took down a Zephyrian communications specialist, eliminating the alien's ability to call for reinforcements or coordinate with other patrol units. The surviving aliens found themselves in an impossible tactical situation. Their improved formation doctrine assumed threats from outside their perimeter, but Marcus and Park were attacking from positions that should have been secure. Worse, the humans' mobility and adaptive camouflage made them nearly impossible to track once they opened fire. Control, Ghost 7, Marcus reported while reloading his rifle. Engaged enhanced Zephyrian patrol in close combat. Enemy tactics effective against long-range engagements but vulnerable to infiltration and ambush. Recommend tactical modification for all units. Copy, Ghost 7. How many hostiles remaining? Marcus checked his tactical display, which showed heat signatures and movement patterns of the surviving aliens. 5 tangos remaining. They're attempting to establish defensive perimeter, but we've got them surrounded. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse played among the ruins of human industrial civilization. The Zephyrians possessed superior firepower and armor, but they were trapped in terrain that negated their advantages while enhancing human capabilities. Marcus and Park moved through the complex like ghosts, appearing long enough to take carefully aimed shots before vanishing into the labyrinthine ruins. Each engagement followed the same pattern: precise human fire from unexpected angles, followed by devastating alien retaliation that struck empty air and demolished more of the complex's already damaged infrastructure. The Zephyrians were burning through their weapons' power cells at an unsustainable rate, while the humans conserved their ammunition for shots that would count. After 20 minutes of sporadic combat, only 2 Zephyrian warriors remained active. Their armor showed multiple scoring marks from near misses, and their movements had become increasingly erratic as stress and ammunition depletion took their toll. Marcus could see through his thermal imaging that one alien was wounded, his energy signature showing the irregular patterns that indicated damaged life support systems. Park, this is it. We take them down now before they adapt further or call for backup. Confirmed. How about the wounded one? You take the other. Marcus lined up his final shot, waiting for the unwounded Zephyrian to move into position. The alien warrior was scanning the ruins with obvious desperation, his weapons sweeping back and forth as he searched for targets that remained stubbornly invisible. Through his scope, Marcus could see the intricate details of alien armor that had been designed to make its wearer invincible on any battlefield. The shot, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. Marcus's round struck the alien center mass, the tungsten penetrator punching through energy shields and armor plating to find the vulnerable biological systems beneath. The warrior collapsed without a sound, his weapon clattering across the debris-strewn floor. Park's target fell a split second later, her shot taking out the wounded alien before he could react to his partner's death. Sudden silence fell across the industrial complex, broken only by the distant sound of wind whistling through damaged structures. Control, Ghost 7. All hostiles eliminated. Ready for extraction. Outstanding work, Ghost 7. Extraction team en route. Intelligence wants full tactical debrief on alien adaptations and countermeasures. As Marcus and Park moved toward the extraction point, they both understood that the war had entered a new phase. The Zephyrians were no longer the overconfident predators who had swept through human space with contemptuous ease. They were learning, adapting, and developing new tactics specifically designed to counter human capabilities. But humans were learning too, and the lesson of this engagement was clear. Adaptation was a two-way street. For every alien countermeasure, human ingenuity could develop a countermeasure. The question was whether humanity could evolve faster than their enemies, because in this war, the species that stopped learning first would be the one facing extinction. The escalation Fleet Admiral Thexiul stood before the assembled War Council of the Dominion High Command, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the artificial stars of the command chamber. The holographic display floating above the crystalline conference table showed a three-dimensional map of human space, with red indicators marking the locations of recent tactical failures that had sent shockwaves throughout the Dominion military hierarchy. Honored counselors, Thexiul began, his voice carrying harmonics that indicated barely controlled frustration. The situation in the Sol sector has deteriorated beyond acceptable parameters. What began as a routine subjugation operation has evolved into a strategic nightmare that threatens our fundamental military doctrine. High Counselor Vexthena, her ancient form supported by the complex life-sustaining apparatus required by her species' extreme longevity, gestured for detailed analysis. Elaborate on the specific nature of these failures, Fleet Admiral. Our preliminary reports suggest isolated incidents rather than systematic problems. Honored Counselor, that assessment is unfortunately incorrect. Thexiul manipulated the holographic display, showing detailed breakdowns of recent engagements. Over the past 36 standard cycles, we have lost 17 complete patrol units for elite strike forces and 2 heavy assault companies. Total casualties now exceed 400 personnel, all at the hands of an enemy force we estimate contains fewer than 2,000 active combatants. The silence that followed was pregnant with implications that none of the council members wanted to acknowledge. The Dominion had built its empire on the foundation of overwhelming technological superiority. Casualty ratios exceeding 20-to-1 in favor of primitive enemies challenged the basic assumptions that justified their entire expansion strategy. High Counselor Zwaxmore, military commander of the Eastern Expansion Fleet, activated his own data displays. Fleet Admiral, these reports suggest the humans have developed weapons technology comparable to our own. How is this possible for a species that achieved interstellar flight less than 2 centuries ago? The humans have not developed superior technology, Honor Counselor. They have developed superior applications of existing technology. Thexiul shifted the display to show weapon analysis data. Their projectile weapons operate on principles we understand completely. Electromagnetic acceleration, kinetic penetration, ballistic trajectory calculation. What we failed to anticipate was their ability to optimize these systems specifically to exploit weaknesses in our defensive architecture. And their tactical doctrine? Inquired High Counselor Nwileseth, whose expertise in xenological warfare had guided Dominion expansion for over 3 centuries. Surely primitive military thinking cannot overcome our strategic advantages. That assumption has proven catastrophically incorrect, Thexiul admitted. Human tactical doctrine abandons conventional military organization entirely. They operate in small, independent units that coordinate through methods our intelligence services cannot adequately monitor. Each engagement reveals new adaptations to our own tactical responses, suggesting a level of innovation that exceeds our ability to develop countermeasures. The Fleet Admiral manipulated the display again, showing tactical recordings from recent engagements. The assembled counselors watched in silence as Dominion forces were systematically dismantled by opponents who seemed to appear from empty terrain, strike with impossible precision, and vanish before retaliation could be organized. These recordings show humans operating from positions our sensors cannot detect, firing from ranges our tactical doctrine considers impossible, and achieving accuracy rates that exceed our own precision weapon systems. Thexiul continued. They have somehow learned to fight in ways that neutralize our technological advantages while maximizing the effectiveness of their own capabilities. High Counselor Vexthana studied the tactical data with growing alarm. Fleet Admiral, what specific countermeasures have you implemented to address these problems? We have attempted 17 different tactical modifications, Honor Counselor. Enhanced sensor arrays, modified patrol patterns, improved armor configurations, and upgraded detection protocols. The humans adapt to each countermeasure faster than we can develop new ones. In some cases, they appear to have anticipated our modifications and prepared responses before we implemented them. That suggests intelligence gathering capabilities we did not expect from a species with their limited technological base. High Counselor ZYX more observed. Are they intercepting our communications, or have they developed predictive analysis beyond their apparent capabilities? Unknown. Honored Counselor. Our communication security remains intact, but human tactical responses suggest they understand our decision-making processes with uncomfortable accuracy. They seem to anticipate our reactions and position themselves to exploit whatever modifications we implement. The implications were disturbing on multiple levels. Military effectiveness throughout the Dominion depended on standardized tactical doctrine that had proven successful against dozens of different species. If humans could consistently predict and counter Dominion tactics, the fundamental basis of their military superiority would be compromised. What do you recommend, Fleet Admiral? High Counselor Inwile Seth asked. I have 3 options to present to the Council, Thexiol replied, activating a new section of the holographic display. First, we can escalate our deployment significantly. Deploy a full battle fleet with orbital bombardment capability and reduce human defensive positions to molten slag regardless of collateral damage to planetary infrastructure. Infrastructure preservation was a primary objective of this operation, High Counselor Vexthana pointed out. The rare element deposits and industrial capacity of human worlds justify conquest specifically because they can enhance Dominion capabilities. Destroying what we came to capture defeats the purpose of expansion. Understood, Honored Counselor. The second option involves withdrawing our ground forces and implementing long-term siege protocols. Establish orbital blockades around human worlds and wait for their populations to surrender due to resource depletion and isolation. Timeline for such an approach? High Counselor ZYX Moore inquired. Intelligence estimates suggest human populations could maintain resistance for several decades using existing infrastructure and resources. Additionally, prolonged siege operations would require massive fleet deployments that would compromise our expansion schedules in other sectors. And the third option? Fleet Admiral Thexiol paused before responding, understanding that his next words would likely determine the course of Dominion policy for decades to come. We could attempt to learn from human tactical innovations and adapt our own military doctrine accordingly. Study their methods, understand their capabilities, and develop new approaches that incorporate their most effective techniques. The suggestion triggered what could only be described as shocked silence among the council members. The Dominion had spent millennia perfecting military doctrine based on technological superiority and conventional tactical thinking. The idea of learning from primitive enemies challenged fundamental assumptions about Dominion supremacy. Fleet Admiral, High Counselor Malseth said carefully, "Are you suggesting that a species we considered technologically inferior has developed military capabilities superior to our own? I am suggesting, Honored Counselor, that they have developed military capabilities we do not possess and cannot effectively counter using existing doctrine. Whether this represents superiority or simply different approaches to warfare is a philosophical question beyond my expertise." What specific capabilities are you referring to? High Counselor Vexthana demanded. Precision marksmanship at extreme ranges, terrain utilization for tactical advantage, adaptive camouflage technology, and distributed command structures that function effectively without centralized coordination. Additionally, they demonstrate psychological resilience that increases their effectiveness under stress rather than degrading it. Thexiol modified the display to show comparative analysis between Dominion and human combat performance. Our warriors are individually superior in terms of physical capabilities and weapons technology. But humans fight as if each individual possessed the tactical awareness and decision-making capability we associate with command-level officers. They seem to understand battlefield dynamics intuitively and adapt their responses faster than our centralized command structure can process information. You are describing capabilities that should be impossible for a species with their neurological development, High Counselor ZYX Moore observed. Our xenological studies suggest human brain capacity is insufficient to support the level of tactical processing you described. Perhaps our xenological studies were incomplete, Honored Counselor. Or perhaps human military effectiveness derives from factors we have not previously considered relevant to combat capability. The council members exchanged glances that spoke of growing unease. If human capabilities exceeded their technological base, it suggested that military effectiveness might depend on factors beyond simple technological superiority. Such a conclusion would require fundamental reassessment of Dominion expansion strategy. Fleet Admiral, High Counselor Vexthena said finally, "What do you need to resolve this situation?" Honor Counselor, I require authorization to implement unconventional tactical approaches, permission to study captured human equipment and tactical manuals, authorization to modify standard Dominion combat doctrine, and resources to develop countermeasures based on actual human capabilities rather than theoretical assessments. You are requesting permission to abandon proven military doctrine in favor of experimental approaches based on enemy innovations. I am requesting permission to win this war, Honored Counselor. Our proven military doctrine is proving insufficient against this particular enemy. We must either adapt our approaches or accept strategic failure. The weight of that statement settled over the council chamber like a heavy fog. Strategic failure was a concept that had not seriously threatened the Dominion in centuries. The idea that primitive humans could force such considerations challenged everything they believed about their own superiority. Very well, Fleet Admiral, High Counselor Nwile Seth decided. You have authorization to implement whatever measures you deem necessary to achieve victory. But understand that failure will have consequences that extend far beyond this single campaign. The Dominion's reputation throughout the galaxy depends on maintaining our image of invincibility. Understood, Honored Counselor. I will not fail. As Fleet Admiral Thex Yule departed the council chamber, he carried with him the weight of an empire's expectations and the growing suspicion that humanity represented something unprecedented in Dominion experience. The war was about to enter a phase where both sides would discover just how much they were willing to sacrifice for victory. But in the depths of space, human observers were already tracking the massive fleet movements that would herald the Dominion's escalated response. The real war was about to begin, and both species would learn that adaptation was a game that anyone could play, but only one side could win. Hashtag the final lesson 6 months after Elena Vasquez's shot heard round the galaxy. The war between humanity and the Dominion had evolved into something neither species had anticipated. The pristine military doctrine of the aliens had been shattered against the adaptive chaos of human warfare, while humanity itself had been transformed by the crucible of near extinction into something harder, sharper, and infinitely more dangerous than their enemies had ever imagined possible. General Sarah Chun stood in the command center of Firebase Prometheus, a fortress carved directly into the living rock of Kepler, 442b's largest mountain range. Around her, holographic displays showed the deployment of Dominion forces across 17 star systems, while streams of data from human intelligence networks tracked alien movements with precision that would have impressed even Zephyrian analysts. Status report, she ordered, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had learned to command not through rank, but through competence proven under fire. Colonel Martinez, now bearing scars from 3 separate alien assassination attempts, gestured toward the main tactical display. The Dominion has committed their 7th battle fleet to this system, General. Intelligence counts 47 capital ships, 300 escort vessels, and approximately 50,000 ground troops. It's the largest force they've deployed since the invasion began. And our response? Approximately 3,000 active combatants across the entire planetary surface, plus civilian support networks, totaling maybe 10,000 non-combatants. On paper, we're outnumbered 20 to 1 by troops alone, not counting their orbital assets. General Chin nodded grimly. The mathematical impossibility of their situation would have induced despair in any rational military commander. But 6 months of impossible victories had taught humanity that mathematics wasn't always the deciding factor in warfare. The question was whether they had learned enough about their enemies to survive the ultimate test of their adaptive capabilities. "What's different about this deployment?" she asked, because there was always something different. The Dominion learned from each engagement, just as humans did, creating an escalating spiral of innovation that had transformed both species' military capabilities beyond recognition. "They've abandoned their standard tactical doctrine entirely," Martinez replied, highlighting specific formations on the display. "No more organized patrol patterns, no predictable command structures, no standardized equipment loadouts. Each unit operates with different procedures, different technology packages, and different response protocols. They're trying to eliminate our ability to predict their behavior," Chen observed. "Interesting. What else?" "They've deployed something new. Our long-range sensors are detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our database. Intelligence thinks they've developed specialized counter-sniper technology, possibly including prediction algorithms designed to identify optimal firing positions before our people can occupy them." Chun studied the alien deployment patterns with the analytical mind that had made her one of humanity's most effective commanders. The Dominion had clearly learned from their catastrophic losses, adapting their approach to eliminate the vulnerabilities the human forces had exploited so effectively. But adaptation was a game that two could play. "Show me our current dispositions," she ordered. The tactical display shifted to show human positions throughout the mountain range. What it revealed would have confused any military strategist trained in conventional warfare. Instead of organized defensive lines or concentrated strongpoints, human forces were scattered in small units that seemed to follow no discernible pattern. Some positions were obvious enough to be spotted by orbital surveillance, while others were so well concealed that even friendly forces required encrypted coordinates to locate them. "Elena's where?" Chen asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. "Position unknown, as always," Martinez replied with what might have been admiration. "She checked in 6 hours ago from Grid 7, but her suit's passive stealth is showing her somewhere in Grid 12 now. Or possibly Grid 4. The woman moves like smoke." Staff Sergeant Elena Vasquez had become something approaching a legend among both human and alien forces. Her confirmed kill count had reached 73 high-value targets, including 2 Dominion fleet commanders and what intelligence believed was a member of their ruling council. More importantly, she had become the symbol of humanity's refusal to accept defeat, the ghost in the machine that could strike anywhere and vanish without trace. "What's the plan?" Chen asked. "The same plan that's worked every time so far," Martinez replied. "We let them come to us, we identify their weaknesses, and we exploit those weaknesses faster than they can develop countermeasures. The only difference this time is the scale of the engagement." General Communications Specialist Thompson called from his station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Dominion flagship. They're requesting direct communication with our commanding officer." Chun frowned. The aliens had never attempted direct communication during previous engagements, preferring to rely on the universal language of overwhelming force. The fact that they wanted to talk suggested either desperation or a new strategy that hadn't appeared in their previous operations. "Put it through." The main holographic display shifted to show the bridge of what was clearly a Dominion capital ship. The alien who appeared was tall even by Zephyrian standards, his armor decorated with insignia that marked him as a senior commander. When he spoke, his words were translated by the universal communication protocols both species had developed. "I am Fleet Admiral Thexiol of the Dominion's 7th Battle Fleet," the alien announced. "I request to speak with the commander of human forces in this system." "I'm General Chun, commanding officer of Human Defensive Forces on Kepler, 442b. What do you want?" "I wish to discuss terms for the conclusion of this conflict." The silence that followed was broken only by the soft, electronic humming of monitoring equipment. After 6 months of brutal warfare, the idea that either side might consider negotiation seemed almost surreal. "What terms did you have in mind?" Chen asked carefully. "Your species has demonstrated military capabilities that exceed our initial assessments," the alien admiral admitted. "We are prepared to offer cessation of hostilities in exchange for detailed technical specifications of your weapon systems and tactical doctrine." "In other words, you want us to teach you how we've been killing you so effectively." "That is essentially correct." In return, we would withdraw from the system and establish formal boundaries between Dominion and human space. Your species would maintain independence within agreed territorial limits. Chen exchanged glances with her senior staff. The offer was more generous than anything they might have expected from an enemy that had begun the war with demands for unconditional surrender. But it also revealed something important about the Dominion's current strategic position. Counteroffer, Chen replied. You withdraw from all human systems immediately and permanently. In return, we don't teach your techniques to every other species you've conquered over the past few centuries. The alien admiral's expression shifted in ways that suggested surprise. You believe you are in a position to make demands. Admiral, let me explain something about human psychology that your intelligence services seem to have missed. We don't negotiate from positions of weakness. We fight until we win or until there's nothing left to fight with. The fact that you're offering to talk tells me you've figured out that this war isn't going the way you expected. Your forces are outnumbered and technologically inferior. And yet your casualty reports tell a different story. How many of your warriors have we killed, Admiral? How many patrol units have simply vanished without sending so much as a distress signal? How many of your commanders have learned to avoid open terrain because they know there's a human sniper somewhere in the shadows with their name on a bullet? The alien silence was answer enough. Chen could see in his expression the growing understanding that technological superiority meant nothing against an enemy that refused to fight according to predictable patterns. The war ends when you leave our space, Chen continued. Not when we teach you how to be better at killing humans. You came here expecting easy conquest, and instead you've discovered that some prey bites back. The smart move is to find easier targets. And if we refuse your terms, then we continue doing what we've been doing, except on a larger scale. You've brought 50,000 troops to this system, Admiral. That just means 50,000 opportunities for us to demonstrate that technological superiority isn't the only factor that determines military outcomes. Chen gestured toward Martinez, who activated a new section of the tactical display. What appeared was a real-time map of human positions throughout the mountain range, showing the true scale of their defensive network for the first time. Hundreds of concealed positions, thousands of prepared firing lanes, and supply caches hidden so effectively that even orbital surveillance couldn't detect them. We've had 6 months to prepare for this moment, Chen explained. Every valley, every ridgeline, every cave system has been mapped, fortified, and ranged for precise fire. Your troops will be facing an enemy that knows this terrain better than you know your own ships. We'll be shooting from positions you can't detect at ranges you can't match, using tactics you can't predict. You cannot hope to destroy an entire battle fleet. We don't need to destroy your fleet, Admiral. We just need to make conquest too expensive to justify. How many casualties are you willing to accept to capture a single world? How many ships are you prepared to lose to an enemy that fights with weapons you barely understand? At what point does military victory become strategic defeat? The alien admiral studied the tactical display with obvious concern. The scope of human preparations was staggering, representing months of coordinated effort by civilian and military personnel working together toward a single goal. More importantly, it demonstrated strategic thinking that extended far beyond simple battlefield tactics. You have prepared thoroughly, he admitted. Admiral, let me tell you something about humans that your xenological studies probably missed. We're a species that evolved by hunting things bigger and stronger than ourselves. We learned to use tools because we had to, develop teamwork because we needed it, and mastered long-range weapons because getting close to our prey meant getting killed. Shin paused, letting the implications sink in before continuing. You spent 6 months learning that humans can be very good at killing things that think they're safe. The question you need to ask yourself is whether you want to find out just how good we can be when our entire species is focused on killing you specifically. The alien admiral's compound eyes fixed on the display, showing human defensive positions, calculating the mathematical impossibility of successfully assaulting prepared positions held by an enemy that had already proven capable of inflicting casualties far beyond acceptable ratios. What guarantee do we have that humans will honor territorial agreements? He asked. The same guarantee you offered us when you invaded our space, without warning, Chen replied. None whatsoever. But here's the difference. We've never conquered other species for the fun of it. We fight when we're threatened, and we stop fighting when the threat goes away. You leave us alone, we leave you alone. It's not complicated, and the technical information we requested, learn it the same way we did through trial and error, innovation, and adaptation. Or don't learn at all. Either way, our techniques stop being effective against you about the same time you stop being a threat to us. Fleet Admiral Thexuel studied the human general's face, searching for signs of deception or weakness that might indicate negotiating advantage. What he found instead was the calm certainty of someone who had calculated the odds and accepted whatever outcome those calculations produced. I will require time to consult with my superiors, he said finally. You have 12 hours, Chen replied. After that, we assume you've chosen to continue the war, and we respond accordingly. The transmission ended, leaving the human command center in contemplative silence. Outside the mountain fortress, 3,000 human warriors waited in positions that would be invisible to orbital surveillance, their weapons trained on approach routes that would soon be filled with alien invaders. Elena Vasquez, invisible somewhere in the mountains, adjusted her rifle's scope and settled in to wait for targets. She had long since stopped counting individual kills, focusing instead on the larger picture of a war that had taught both species far more about themselves than either had expected to learn. The war would end, one way or another, within the next few days. But the lessons learned in these mountains would echo through galactic history for centuries to come, teaching the universe that technological superiority was no guarantee of military victory, and that some species were far more dangerous when threatened than anyone had imagined possible. The Dominion had thought they could win through overwhelming force. They had learned instead that victory required understanding your enemy, and that some enemies were worth avoiding altogether. Whether they would apply that lesson remained to be seen, but humanity had already applied theirs. They had learned that survival meant adapting faster than threats could evolve, and that the most powerful weapon in any arsenal was the willingness to never give up. The silent mountains waited, and somewhere in the darkness, a human sniper smiled.